Can an airline file for bankruptcy twice in less than a year and still survive? For Spirit Airlines, America's largest ultra-low-cost carrier, this isn't a theoretical question, it's their harsh reality. On August 29, 2025, just 5 months after emerging from Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, Spirit shocked the aviation world by filing for bankruptcy again. This unprecedented Chapter 22 filing marked one of the most dramatic failures in modern airline history, raising serious questions about whether the budget carrier's business model can survive in today's competitive landscape. The first bankruptcy came on November 18, 2024, following the collapse of Spirit's planned $3.8 billion merger with JetBlue Airways. That initial restructuring, which converted $795 million in debt to equity, seemed like a fresh start. Spirit emerged on March 12, 2025, after just 114 days in bankruptcy court, one of the fastest airline restructurings in history. But the celebration was short-lived. Within months, it became painfully clear that swapping debt for equity wasn't enough. Spirit needed fundamental operational changes, not just financial engineering. And the airline's second bankruptcy filing acknowledged this brutal truth. The perfect storm of challenges. Understanding Spirit's collapse requires examining the perfect storm that battered the ultra-low-cost carrier. The problems began long before the bankruptcy filings, stretching back to 2020 when Spirit accumulated approximately $2.5 billion in losses over 4 years. Unlike legacy carriers that rebounded strongly after the pandemic, Spirit never regained its pre-pandemic profitability. The airline reported losses in every single quarter following COVID-19, even as travel demand surged back to record levels across the industry. The Pratt & Whitney engine crisis compounded Spirit's misery in devastating ways. In July 2023, Pratt & Whitney announced a critical defect in the powdered metal used in certain engine parts for its geared turbofan engines, the very engines powering Spirit's modern Airbus A320neo fleet. This forced Spirit to ground approximately 20% of its aircraft for accelerated inspections and repairs, crippling the airline's operational capacity at the worst possible time. By December 2025, Spirit had negotiated $140 million in engine credits from International Aero Engines, but engine removals are expected to continue through 2026, creating ongoing operational disruption and uncertainty. The failed merger that sealed Spirit's fate. The story of Spirit's downfall is inseparable from its failed merger attempts, particularly the collapsed JetBlue acquisition. In February 2022, Spirit initially agreed to merge with fellow budget carrier Frontier Airlines for $2.9 billion, creating what would have been America's fifth-largest airline. But JetBlue intervened with a superior offer of $3.8 billion, and Spirit's shareholders ultimately backed the higher bid, despite regulatory concerns that proved prescient. The Department of Justice challenged the JetBlue merger on antitrust grounds, arguing it would harm competition and increase fares for budget-conscious travelers. On January 16, 2024, a federal judge agreed and blocked the acquisition, stating the merger was anti-competitive and would reduce consumer choice. The ruling devastated Spirit's stock price, which plummeted 47% immediately. Industry analysts had viewed this merger as Spirit's best, perhaps only viable path to long-term survival. Without it, Spirit was left to compete alone against legacy carriers with far greater resources, more extensive networks, and stronger balance sheets in an increasingly consolidated industry. The flawed first bankruptcy strategy. Spirit's first bankruptcy filing in November 2024 was a pre-negotiated restructuring with bondholders that focused exclusively on balance sheet repair. The plan converted $795 million of senior secured bonds into equity, making bondholders the majority owners while completely wiping out existing shareholders. The airline obtained confirmation of its reorganization plan on February 20, 2025, and emerged from bankruptcy on March 12, 2025, having spent just 114 days under court protection, remarkably fast by airline bankruptcy standards. However, this speed came at a cost. Spirit avoided the difficult operational changes necessary for long-term viability. The airline didn't reduce its fleet significantly, didn't exit unprofitable routes at scale, and didn't fundamentally restructure its cost base. Aircraft lease obligations remained largely unchanged, and Spirit's business model, offering rock-bottom base fares while charging for everything else, continued unchanged. By summer 2025, it became painfully obvious that this limited restructuring was insufficient. Spirit's first quarterly report after emerging from bankruptcy contained a devastating going concern warning, stating there was substantial doubt about the airline's ability to continue operations. The second bankruptcy and drastic cuts. When Spirit filed for Chapter 11 protection again on August 29, 2025, the airline's leadership acknowledged that far more comprehensive changes were necessary. CEO Dave Davis stated bluntly that there is much more work to be done and that the airline would pursue a complete operational transformation. This second bankruptcy represented a complete strategic reversal. The Spirit would finally implement the painful cuts it avoided during the first restructuring. The numbers tell a sobering story of contraction. Spirit announced a 25% capacity reduction for November 2025 compared to the previous year. focusing only on its most profitable markets. The airline exited 11 U.S. cities in October 2025 and canceled planned service to Macon, Georgia. Spirit furloughed 365 pilots in early 2026 and downgraded 170 additional pilots, while also furloughing approximately 1,800 flight attendants. The airline sold 23 Airbus aircraft to GA to leases and planned to return 87 leased aircraft to lessors, shrinking its fleet dramatically. These cuts are expected to reduce costs by hundreds of millions of dollars annually, the kind of fundamental restructuring that should have happened the first time. The broken ultra-low-cost model. At the heart of Spirit's troubles lies a fundamental question. Is the ultra-low-cost carrier model still viable in America's current aviation landscape? Spirit pioneered the unbundled fare concept in the United States, stripping away all amenities and charging separately for seat selection, carry-on bags, checked luggage, snacks, and even water. For years, this approach worked brilliantly, allowing Spirit to offer the lowest advertised fares while maintaining profitability through ancillary revenue. But the competitive environment has shifted dramatically against Spirit. Legacy carriers like Delta, United, and American have introduced their own basic economy fares that compete directly on price while offering better networks, more frequent flights, superior reliability, and valuable loyalty programs. Consumers increasingly value flexibility and service quality, especially after experiencing COVID-19's travel disruptions, areas where Spirit has historically underperformed. The airline's operational metrics lag competitors, with by-leverage on-time performance and customer satisfaction scores that regularly rank among the industry's worst. When your primary selling point is the lowest price, operational problems become magnified because customers feel they're not even getting what little they paid for. The fight for survival continues. As of February 2026, Spirit's path forward remains uncertain and heavily dependent on external factors. In December 2025, reports emerged that Spirit was again in merger discussions with Frontier Airlines, marking the third attempt to combine these two budget carriers. Frontier had made unsuccessful offers during Spirit's first bankruptcy in January 2025, including a $2.1 billion proposal that Spirit rejected as inadequate and unactionable. However, Frontier abruptly replaced longtime CEO Barry Biffle with President James Dempsey in mid-December 2025, raising questions about the airline's commitment to any potential deal. More recently, in late January 2026, alternative investment firm Castlelake entered talks to potentially acquire Spirit after the Frontier discussions stalled. Castlelake, which launched Merit Air Finance with $1.8 billion in deployable capital in August 2025, represents a different type of buyer and investment firm rather than a direct competitor. Meanwhile, Spirit has secured debtor-in-possession financing totaling $575 million to sustain operations through the restructuring. $475 million secured in October 2025, an additional $100 million in December 2025, split into two tranches of $50 million each. The airline continues operating flights and accepting bookings, but the pilots' union has warned that bondholders could potentially force liquidation if they do not honor funding commitments. Lessons from the edge. Spirit Airlines' unprecedented journey through to bankruptcies in 9 months offers critical lessons for the aviation industry and beyond. The carrier's first restructuring failed precisely because it addressed symptoms rather than causes, reducing debt without fixing the underlying operational and strategic problems. Financial engineering alone cannot save a company with a fundamentally challenged business model. Spirit's experience demonstrates that bankruptcy protection provides breathing room, but companies must use that time to make genuinely transformative changes, not just cosmetic adjustments. The broader implications extend throughout the ultra-low-cost carrier sector. If Spirit ultimately fails, it will send shockwaves through budget aviation, potentially triggering consolidation among remaining discount carriers or forcing fundamental rethinking of the unbundled fare model. For the millions of passengers who've relied on Spirit's low fares to make air travel affordable, the stakes are personal and financial. As February 2026 unfolds, Spirit stands at a crossroads: potential acquisition by Frontier or Castlelake, emergence as a drastically smaller independent airline, or liquidation. The coming months will determine whether this storied carrier can truly reinvent itself or whether we're re-witnessing the final chapter of America's largest ultra-low-cost airline. Thank you for watching this comprehensive analysis of Spirit Airlines' turbulent journey through bankruptcy. The aviation industry continues to evolve rapidly, and the world Documentaries is committed to bringing you accurate, in-depth coverage of the stories that matter. If you found this documentary informative and thought-provoking, please subscribe to our channel for more investigative analysis. Hit the like button to support our research, and don't forget to enable notifications so you never miss our latest uploads. We're eager to hear your perspective. Have you flown Spirit Airlines recently? What was your experience during this turbulent period? Do you believe Spirit can survive through acquisition, or is liquidation inevitable? More broadly, do you think the ultra-low-cost carrier model still works in today's aviation environment, or has the industry fundamentally changed? Share your thoughts, experiences, and predictions in the comments section below. Your insights help build a richer understanding of these complex industry dynamics.